We love talking to Megyn Kelly, and she has had one hell of a week. In fact, just minutes ago, she put an interview to air with the former President Donald Trump, and I'm pleased to say that the great lady joins us from the Lady Man Cave right now in the US. Lovely to see you, Megyn.
Hi, great to be here.
So, I was fascinated by so much about this interview, and inevitably you can't help but sort of try to do a bit of sort of amateur psychoanalyzing, all the rest of it. What was your sense about the reality of his concern that, yeah, there's a chance he's going to go to jail? Did you get a sense that he has actually spent a couple of sleepless nights thinking about what might be his future?
I'm concerned he's not getting it. I'm concerned he's not getting it at all. I mean, there is a very decent chance he is going to go to jail. He shouldn't, but look, given the juries he's facing and the judges he's facing and the charges on the one thing I really zeroed in on, he's very likely to be convicted of obstruction. I mean, that's the one I think he's most vulnerable on. I don't think he totally appreciates what they're about to do to him. He needs to win. He needs to win so that he can pardon himself or pull the DOJ off of those 2 federal cases. And if he doesn't win, he needs another Republican to win. So I do think he should spend more time reflecting on it. Maybe he just doesn't operate that way because it's better to compartmentalize without thinking like that. But I'll say this. I thought the lowest point of the interview for him was the discussion on the obstruction charge. And he wiggled and not particularly well. And that's his freedom right there. That's his freedom. He needs a better answer. Or if I were advising him, I'd say, stop talking about it at all. Just stop. Just say it's BS, political persecution. This is election interference, and that's all I'm going to say, because I'm not going to hand these vicious prosecutors any more evidence than they've already purported to collect on me.
Well, I thought it was really interesting when you asked him the question about, look, obviously your life was heading in this trajectory. You could have just sat in a golden tower with a supermodel for the rest of your life, or go from golf club to golf club. And he said, there's a chance I may never see these things again. He was talking potentially about his overseas properties, but I thought that was the little insight that maybe, just maybe, he does think about where he might end up.
To me, that you could have read that either way. And I actually talked with my team about it after, saying, do you think that was Trump saying I might go to jail and not see these beautiful properties or not go to Scotland again? Or is that him saying, I'm just going to be so busy, if I become president again, I'm not going to go? And we kind of felt like it was the latter. But either way, what I heard was a man who is, let's be honest, nearing the end of life. I mean, as every 77-year-old is at some point in the next probably 20 years. And, you become more reflective, and you do tend to prioritize the things that are most important to you. And I think he does love getting out to these beautiful golf courses and spending his time with the sunshine on him and relaxing. He's very proud of his golf record. He started the interview with that, and he ended the interview with that. But I genuinely think he feels a call to arms. He feels a call to protect the country. I do believe he thinks he's the only one who can do it. And of course, he also would benefit mightily from it if it were him, if he were the one who got reelected, because he could pardon himself or pull those DOJs off of his back.
Did you get any insight into some potential defences here? Because he obviously, the correct answer is to say, look, this stuff's garbage, but we'll have more to say inside the court. Did you get any insight into what you think his defences are going to be? Because, it's the Presidential Records Act, there's nothing to see here. Well, a prosecutor's going to turn around and say, well, it's not about the Presidential Records Act. It's about what was said to this person at this time, and about, the boss wants us to wipe the server.
He tried to say that the Presidential Records Act completely covers him, and that's just not the case. The Presidential Records Act doesn't let you do whatever you want to do with intelligence documents. It just doesn't. And that's why I said, are you saying that the CIA could give you a classified briefing and you could do whatever you wanted with it? And he stopped. I mean, he wouldn't go that far, because he knows that would be an absurd thing to say. So this is the problem for Trump. I zeroed in on this it's an actual meeting we know he had at Bedminster, his golf club, about his chief of staff's book, because that's the prosecution in that documents case amended its indictment and filed a superseding indictment about this one document that they say had a classified marking on it and showed a Department of Defense plan to attack Iran. And that he was waving it around to everybody saying, look at this, my God, it's classified. Could have declassified it while president, but now I'm not, so I can't. It's top secret. Now, if that's true, then they've got him. They've got him on you retained a document that you knew was classified. Your defense that you declassified everything as soon as you left the White House is obviously a lie, because this happened a year after you left the White House, and you're saying it's still classified and it's in your possession. He was asked about it in another interview. He said, oh, I didn't have a document. It was a newspaper article. So this is the first time somebody's gotten him down to say, why on earth would you be referring to a newspaper article as something that's top secret, that's classified, that's still a secret, quote, still a secret? No, why wouldn't you just say, here is a newspaper article that I found. It is very interesting. You should read it, right? Like, that's not what happened. And he tried to deny that he had said that to Bret Baier, which he did. It's on tape. And then I tried to say, well, then what was it? What was it? If it wasn't what was? And he said, I don't have to tell you that. I'm not going to tell you that. So Paul, he's in danger. He didn't handle the documents well. That's not to excuse this prosecution, because they didn't go after Hillary and they shouldn't be doing it to Trump. But he does have some answers to give on these very tricky issues. And so far, they're not there.
Now, obviously, there's the off-the-record bit, there's the on-the-record bit, but I have to ask from sort of one person who knows how to do it in front of a camera to another. What was you like before and after? Did he give you a lot of pre-chat? Did he make you sit there and just turned up and didn't say anything till the camera rolls? Did you go for a walk around the property afterwards? What was he like before and after?
We braided each other's hair, and yeah,
you know what I'm asking.
Yeah, no, it was professional and it was polite. I wouldn't say it was genuinely warm. I think Trump is still mad about that debate question in his heart. Like he wants to point out how well he did in answering it, and I agree that he did well. The base loved his answer. It drove his poll numbers up, but he felt wounded by it or angry about it, and still does. He can't let it go. And so, he raised it. It was the first thing he raised when he saw me in July. It was the first thing he raised when I saw him yesterday. It was the last thing he raised before we said goodbye. Like he raised in the interview. There was a lot of focus on that debate question. It's been 8 years. He's won the presidency since then. He served as president. It's time to move past it, but he does hold a grudge.
But also, he's given you an interview after the question. He's clearly okay to sit down with you now because of the enormous size of your audience. He obviously respects you enough to be able to say, hey, come down and I know you're going to be fair. And let's be honest, the answer to the question was such a TV perfect zinger that I think that's the moment he clinched the nomination. Why keep going on about it?
Is there a more viral moment in debate history than that moment? There isn't. He did handle it well. People were so interested in the question. No one ever asked me, do you think he did well in response to it? I do think he did well in response to it. And I'm fine with that. My goal was not to kill Trump on that stage. It was to ask him A+ level questions. But look, I will say this about Trump. He had the stones to come on with me. He knew I wasn't going to go softball on him. He knew I was going to ask him hard questions. And he still sat with me, and not just sat with me. Originally, he agreed to 45 minutes. He let it go for an hour and 20. He could have easily, his team was like, okay, wrap. And he was like, no, we're good. And so contrast that with President Biden, President Basement, who still won't talk to anybody. And not that there's a reporter out there who's willing to ask him tough questions, Paul, but the press lets him get away with his complete camouflage routine where we never get to see the real him because nobody ever puts tough questions to him. Trump is out there talking about his criminal indictments, for the love of God. There's nothing that's off limits. So I give him immense credit for that. And, you asked me about the dynamic between the two of us. I mentioned to you that I wouldn't say necessarily tense, but not, just not the way you and I would greet each other. But that also is to his credit. So this is not somebody who feels entirely warm and fuzzy about me, but he still said yes. This weekend, he's going on Meet the Press. They hate his guts. I give him credit for it. So he doesn't want to do the debate with these other guys who he's 50 points ahead of. That makes some sense to me. But he will sit down with media, in the case of NBC, that he knows hates him. In the case of me, that he knows doesn't hate him, but that will ask him tough questions. And that's his obligation to the American people. I do give him credit for it.
Also, I always, hear people talk about Donald Trump in an interview that these things are sometimes hard to follow, or he's bouncing all over the place like a pinball machine. That might be his brain, but also because he is a bit of a grudge holder, he wants to remember every fight, win every fight, remember every slight, set the record straight. And because much of the psychological warfare that he went through as a candidate and a president meant that there was 6 things a day that may be true, most likely were not true, were definitely misinterpretations, that he wants to say it all. Do you think that that makes him a different proposition in 2024 than he was in 2016? Because in 2016 it seems that, build the wall, build the wall, build the wall, build the wall. Message discipline means that you're eventually able to reach people. But when you're trying to sort of say 100 different things in relation to any one question, that you do yourself a bit of a disservice?
It's a good point. He doesn't have the message discipline now that he did the first time around. He's getting off of the election, quote, denialism, however you want to refer to it, a little bit more. So that's good. You could see him try to exercise some discipline in the interview where he would veer toward, grievances about Pennsylvania. And then you could see him correct. He clearly has been told many times and is listening now to people don't want to hear about that anymore. They don't want, so that's good. But now he's got to fill it. He's got to fill it with a message that does work. His message overall yesterday or today, whatever it was pessimistic in a way that I think will resonate with frustrated GOP voters, that he actually said, I don't think the country survives if I don't win this next election. It was dark, but I think he's not the only one who feels that way. And, if you zoom out and look at the weaponization of the DOJ and the FBI and the crazy overreach by our public health agencies and the White House trying to censor speech contrary to the First Amendment and the Bill of Rights at every turn, just to name a few, men trying to claim they're women and come into our spaces, and we have the president of the United States backing that up. And so it feels dystopian. So Trump is actually a very good messenger for that angst a lot of us are feeling of like, what the hell happened to our country? However, you can't go out there every speech and every interview and just be dark, 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 dark. You've got to have that Reagan-esque touch of here's where I can take it. And Trump was doing a bit of that too. And he's got a whole first term he can point to remind you of what America looks and feels like when he's in the Oval.
Yeah, I think it's a problem that Republicans certainly miscalculated, say, going into the midterms, which is define the problem, define the problem, define the problem. But at some point you have to offer yourself as the solution. And something that's really interesting about how, say, the 2020 election went, the 22, and now we're getting ready for 24, is that there doesn't seem to be a lot of conversation about, if you vote for me, here is how your life changes. Instead, it's all about the overall for the country. Do you think that it's important that when you are the challenger, even if you're the one who's trying to return to the office, that you actually have to talk about, this is what will change for you if you vote for me?
One of the things I noticed in talking to him yesterday is Trump likes to jump on board defining the problem. He hears your question and he's like, yes, that is an issue. And then he wants to talk about why it's such an issue. But he doesn't then spin to, and here's my solution to it. And I think the reason people aren't holding that against him is because they trust him. They're like, he's a deal maker. Once he gets in there, he's going to get advised by people who know how to solve these problems. And I trust in Trump to listen to the right people and make the right decisions. You look at what he did at the border when it was so much better than it is right now. The Remain in Mexico stuff, the ban on for COVID people coming across the border, Title 42. So many, he stopped catch and release. The deportations went up. He just did so much to secure the border. It wasn't perfect, but he did way more than the previous presidents. So all he really ran on was build the wall. He didn't run on any of that other stuff I just listed, but people advised him and he listened to them. So I think that's why Trump gets away with it. Because if you contrast that with, Ron DeSantis, he's all about the solutions. He won't spend very much time on the problem. He's like, I get it. Here's the problem in one line. Here's exactly what I'm going to do about it. And he's more of a technocrat. And for somebody like me, who's a lawyer and a logical thinker, I like that. I'm like, oh, okay, great. Let's get to that phase of the conversation. But I think a lot of people just have they get mocked for it, but in Trump we trust, and they're willing to put him back into the red throne because they trust him and him alone to fix it.
I also loved watching in real time him, frankly, trying to have it both ways on Fauci. Now, quite understandably, and good on you for bringing it up, this was a figure that was, yes, in a position of power because that was his position in the government. But Trump never fired him. He never silenced him. He never defunded him. He never told him to get out of the way. And he, of course, ended up becoming a lightning rod for all of the multiplicity of weird things that happened as a result of COVID. I was interested that in the preview day before we got the full interview today, you released about a 9-minute clip and it was the conversation in and around Fauci. Is that because you saw particular value in how he was not quite answering those questions?
It's because I asked my audience, what would you like me to ask Trump? And it was the number one question by far. Do you have any regrets on how you handled COVID? From Fauci to the lockdowns to the mandates that his White House coronavirus task force was recommending on masks. Wouldn't you like a do-over? That's what people want to know. These are his fans, for the most part. They want to hear him say, yeah, I would have done it a little differently had I do what you do. That is what they wanted him to say. It's not who Trump is. It's not. I mean, there's a quote going around the internet of old Trump, is really young Trump, but I mean a long time ago, saying, you just don't admit when you make mistakes. Just don't. If they've got you dead to rights, blame it on somebody else. And he does live his life that way. I don't think he's capable of saying I screwed it up. It's just not who he is. I do think that's a problem because if you look at the reactions to the interview, core MAGA, they're fine with it. They love Trump. He had classic Trump moments when he was just explaining why he calls Ron DeSantis Ron DeSanctimonious. It was kind of funny, I have to say. Like, I don't love the name calling, but he's funny, when he was talking about, he was ripping on me for that debate question. It was terrible, oh, you were awful. Kind of funny too. His, talking about Biden, he can't speak. He can't put two sentences together. He makes you laugh a little. When you talk about Bruce and Caitlyn Jenner, like, he was very good looking. He's this good looking. He's just, there's something, you kind of start chuckling and you're like, I like him, right? So the Trump world like that, but DeSantis world is mad about the COVID stuff. And they want him to take some accountability of it. And they hate the fact that he's trying to paint Ron DeSantis as a COVID hawk when DeSantis was anything of the kind, anything but that. And he also pushed back on Trump's White House coronavirus task force time and time again, which was run by Fauci. They were trying to make Florida mask. And Ron DeSantis said no. They were trying to make them mandate the vaccine. And he said no. Ron DeSantis did things like pass a law saying you may not fire somebody for not getting the jab. That was very unique among governors. At best, other governors were saying, all right, don't mandate it. We're not going to mandate it. But they weren't punishing corporations that tried to mandate it. So we all know that Ron DeSantis was one of the best governors in America on pushing back against the COVID mania. And when I pressed back on Trump, not too hard because it's not my job to defend Ron DeSantis. It's my job to elicit Trump's opinion, same as I did when I had Ron there. But when I pushed back a little, Trump backed right off of it. He said, I'm not attacking anybody, because he knows it's not true. It's a political thing between those guys.
Yeah, exactly. And sort of, one that he's tried to make personal. But look, anyone's allowed to run for the nomination. But I'm very much with you, which is, look, the guy deserves another shot at it. See what happens. DeSantis is young enough that if he wants to, he can come back again in 4 years. All right, I'm going to let you go in a sec, but I wanted to ask about Melania. I love the way you asked him about Melania. I love the way that he responded about Melania. Now, you could also, and again, I'm not inside his head, but I'm going to pretend to be for a second or two. He loves his wife. He loves his kid, and very obviously the dynamic in their relationship is, don't talk about me. I'm a private person. If you force me to be, a public person because I have to be the first lady, I want to do it on my terms. I loved how he was equally proud but protective of his wife. What did you think?
I really think that Melania gets a bad rap. I think she was 100% classy and collected and dignified when she was the first lady and has remained the same thereafter. She's not running in front of the cameras. She doesn't need attention. She spent a lifetime in front of the cameras. That was fine. That was good enough. She, as he pointed out, she made it on the cover of Vogue as a civilian. She didn't need to get up there as the first lady, as they've done for all these lefties. You know, I mean, Michelle Obama's on there, Vogue doing the big spread on Karine Jean-Pierre, please, and not Melania. Okay. So he points out she earned it, you know, on merit, on her actual beauty. That's how you normally land on the cover of Vogue, not for her husband's politics. In any event, I do know somebody who's pretty close to them, and this person told me in advance of the interview, she's his rock. There's only one person, Kellyanne Conway said publicly, there's only one person he fears, and it's Melania. But that they're actually tight, and they have dinner together every night. They love each other. I know all the stories about Trump and the porn stars and the alleged cheating. And of course, I've covered a lot about him and the women, as everybody now knows. I don't know what goes on in the marriage, and I don't know what the covenant is, but I do know that she has stood by him. She did not leave right after he left office, as so many of these Trump-hating Dems predicted she would do, right? That she was going to leave him. I think she genuinely loves her husband, and whether they have an arrangement or what, I couldn't tell you, but I think they're actually close.
Last one. Have you been to the ER yet? On your radio show, you explained that it was very cold in there because he's a bloke, and you're a person who likes things rather warm in your studio. So you had some hand warmers, but then I think that you ended up sitting on them at one point in time. Are you okay?
Yes. I am okay. They didn't have the stickers on them, Paul. If they had the stickers on them, I would have stuck those right on my bottom. No questions asked. I was freezing my you-know-what off. I was blue. My teeth were chattering. You know how my arms were like kind of shaking, and I kept trying to find like a good arm position. Like maybe I put it over here. Oh, you can see it shaking. People are going to think I'm nervous about Trump. I'm just freezing to death. So they gave me the hand warmers. They didn't have the sticky stuff on them. I wound up sticking them right behind my back, and I just stayed glued to the back the whole time because I needed the heat. And then the worst of it was when we were waiting for him to come in. You know, it's like a power move to sort of make you wait as the journalist. A lot of these big guys do this to you, whatever. I was right underneath the air conditioning grate, like the vent. It was blowing on me. I was like, this seems intentional.
That wasn't an accident,
me off my game. I will not be thrown.
That was not an accident. That was because you asked him a damn question that he nailed.
All's well that ends well. I'm fine.
Correct. Love you, Megyn. All the best. We'll talk to you again next week. But again, congratulations.
Love you
I want
too,
everyone to watch it in full. You can see it on Megyn's YouTube channel. Lovely to see you, mate.
Great to see you. See you next week.